Producer was waiting for me to say let's go for a break when Robert Marawa had said let's go for a break. Yo! Anyway, welcome back to PM Express. I'm Gary Al Smith. George Adu Jr. is going to get a bit of water. He will be back. But this part is just for your questions and absolutely nothing else. Our guest again, if we can see them, if you just joined us, where have you been? From in the right corner and in the red corner, Pt.2, international commentator. He's in the red corner, even though he's in a... Peter, what are you wearing again?
I think this is blue.
Ah, right. It looks green from... Blue, yeah. And
it's just the lighting in my study.
Oh, right. Maybe the lighting in your study. And John Champion looking very, very sun-tanned. It's not late summer. It's the beginning of summer, but it looks like you've been on the beach for weeks, John.
Well, we've had extraordinary weather here. It was, I mean, by our rather modest standards, it was 75, 76 degrees today, 24 or 25 if you prefer the other currency. So we've been taking our time in the sun and really enjoying it. And it's very unusual for mid-May, so we are savouring it.
Yeah, you do look the part. So he's in the blue corner. Robert, what color of corner do you like again?
Let's say I am in the red corner.
Nah, that is for Peter. Peter took the red corner. So I'm vetoing and giving you the green, which is very predominant in the South African flag. Is that okay?
Salute.
Robert Marawa, big man. When I say big, I mean literally. I don't mean in the figurative sense. Robert, what's your height again?
181.
Unbelievable. And he's huge and big and thick and tall. He's the biggest of the bunch in terms of, you know, how imposing. He can be our bodyguard if we run into any problems in this meeting. So that will be Robert Marawa. And then Kwabena Yeboah, who straddles the Ghanaian sports journalism atmosphere like a colossus, rather like the Greeks used to do, and in the Roman times also. He, as you can see in his background, is the president of the Sports Writers Association of Ghana, a man we are not immensely proud of, we are fiercely protective of, indeed. Welcome again to PM Express, guys. It's been fun having you. So we'll take a round of questions. When George comes back from his water break, I'm not sure what he's drinking, we'll continue with him. All right, so more questions coming in. Who are this? This one is for who? Yes, Kwabena Yeboah. This is for you, but I think that it can go around the table. In terms of legacy, I mean, like I said, all of you commentators on the show today have about 120, 130 years worth of experience between you. Are you intending to establish any institutions, or what are you planning as a legacy for young and upcoming journalists, to the four of you? Let's begin with you, Kwabena Yeboah. Briefly, please.
Well, I think we've already started it through the Sports Writers Association of Ghana, where we organize training sessions for quite a number of members. And also over the years, I've had the privilege of linking up with quite a number of youngsters to bring my experience to bear on them. I'm very, very, very proud. I don't know what I'm permitted to say this, but Michael Otiaje makes me very, very proud indeed. We worked together for several years today. He's a little giant on his own. And so we'll continue there. But the platform that I intend to use is the Sports Writers Association of Ghana platform. And that is why I try to encourage all who practicing sports journalists to try and get on this platform. Over the last few months, for instance, we've been privileged to send quite a number of our members to Hungary, to Uruguay. We returned from Hungary not long ago. We've been to Uruguay. We've been to the Netherlands. We've been to Switzerland, where we have seminars and courses for some of our members. So we take it from there, and I hope that we sharpen our skills.
Kwabena, just give me names for this question I'm going to ask you. I know you are a very humble man, modest. Give me some names of people you have mentored. I know some of the list, but give me about 5 names. And that's not to say you are they are the ones you are proudest of, but just give me a couple of names you have mentored.
Well, may his soul rest in peace. But our own Tony Osuamofa.
He was fantastic.
Went to Tony Osuamofa, who went to the UK, came back, and unfortunately passed. Titi Bansing is one of those I proudly associated with. Barrister or Sasibe is one of those I was privileged to nurture. And as I indicated, Michael Otiaje, a man I'm so proud of. And you know that the current communication director of the Ghana Football Association, Henry Asante, he was also one of those. And then Benjamin Graham, who is doing marvelously well as a commentator in this country, is also one of those. So in our own little way, we're trying how best we can impact some of these personalities. But I think in the coming years, there will be a number of more youngsters coming through the middle.
Nice one. Kwabna, let me let you in on a secret. These youngsters, they are going to take your job, so beware. Yeah. Peter, let me come to you. What are your plans to pass on your knowledge? I mean, your wealth of experience. Your first World Cup was in 1998, I believe, you know. Yeah, your first World Cup was in 1998. And then tell us a bit about, briefly, your story in terms of your first sports commentary. I know your first sports commentary was actually not football, it was cricket. And then finish with how you are going to, train people.
Yeah, well, in terms of looking forward, I sort of feel worried talking about this word legacy, because in my own head, I'm still 25 and yearning to get better, really. I'm just a child growing up in this industry. I know John would say the same, that I do make it my business to try and interact whenever asked to by young aspirant commentators, and there are plenty of them. It's a very, very competitive industry, and those who get in touch certainly get a full reply. I know that is the case with John as well. During this lockdown, actually just last week, I was sort of semi-chairing an online conference of students in this country, which was a nice thing to be able to contribute to. It's all you can do is pass on what you know. And if what I know helps a few get on, then that is a great thing. But I would be building my part beyond all reasonable proportion if I started talking of myself in terms of legacy, I think.
Nice one. George, please get ready for your question while we take the same answer from John and finally Marawa. So John, what are you planning? I mean, I know you want to be modest, but you definitely have plans of leaving what you've learned over the years.
Like Peter, I will help anyone that asks me, and plenty do, as they ask all of us. And it's nice to impart some of the things we've picked up along the way. I remember in my formative days as a young commentator at the BBC on television, certainly there were two masters of the trade in John Motson and Barry Davis, two iconic names in our industry, both of whom, very different in style, gave me a lot of their time. So in a small way, I like to be able to think I can do the same. And interestingly, one of the attractions in going to America was that Major League Soccer are acutely aware that there aren't perhaps quite as many young aspirant soccer broadcasters, as they would call them, coming through in the United States, because the glamour gigs are in the NFL or with the baseball or the ice hockey or the basketball. And so they're planning to set up some sort of broadcasting school at Syracuse University in New York State. And they've very kindly asked if I might like to contribute in some way there. So maybe that's something for the future. But in terms of a legacy, I think that's far too grand a term for what we might leave behind. It would just be nice that people will notice that you've actually left the stage.
To you?
Yeah, Gary, I think from my side, I'm far from leaving any legacy. I think I'm just fresh out of a maternity ward right now. So we're not even going to think about that. The journey hasn't even begun. We're still going to be getting into the swing of things and enjoying this beautiful sport called football, and of course, sports in general. For me, it really has been great to see also like John has mentioned, President Yabo has mentioned, and Peter as well, that it's about really taking a couple of people who believe in what you do. And there are people that are watching this broadcast right now on Twitter. They're also saying that, we just admire what you do. And when I see some of the people that approach me and they wanted to get into the industry, and I see them doing well, and I watch television and I see them flourishing and doing well and winning awards and going on all of these excursions to whether to cover a European tournament or whether to cover an Olympic Games or to cover any kind of sport that is going to take them away from the country, I always feel a sense of pride, because you generally get a sense of people that are genuine about what they feel about the work that we do. It takes a lot of work, and I know it takes a lot of preparation, lots of hours. You don't just walk into a booth, like the commenters have said, and you're just going to deliver. It takes a lot more than that. They got a call. I know they've said it's not a science, it's a talent, maybe it's an intelligent one, because they've got to make up these words as the action is happening. And it does take that ability, it does take that gift and that talent to do it, but it's also a damn lot of work, though. People got to be able to plug in the hard work and not take it for granted that football. Knowing football is wonderful, but it's what you do with that football to marry, to match, to mix and match all of those images to try and paint the picture. And the same when it comes to a sportscaster sitting in the studio trying to conduct those interviews or trying to conduct that post-match conversation with your guests. It requires the same depth as well as research and everything else that goes into it. So I really say to people that want to reach out, social media is there, and people have reached out. I've helped where I can. Obviously, you can't help everybody, but I think you get a sense of the people that are really and truly serious and want to get ahead.
Good. George has taken his drink. He's back. He's seated. Mr. Ado, please, over to you.
Yeah, Rob, Kwabena, John, and Peter, I must say that there may be just a few people you would actually come in contact with and be teaching, but there are so many people around the world, millions of people that you inspire every other day. And I'm going to ask the question, this is going to Peter, because I'm one of those many guys around the world who are simply inspired by what you do. So sometimes you are not even sure about the number of lives you're touching, but I have to tell you, you are touching so many lives. Now, this is a question to you, Peter, and it's one that came up on the Twitter feed. Now, it says, how does the wordsmith in you suddenly come alive in those magical moments? Because it appears you are always just there, like you planned for it.
Well, the thing is to be, to coin a phrase that's so well used in this country at the moment, is to be alert, really. It's a very, very difficult question to answer. The word I used before was instinct, and it is instinct. And there is, of course, a degree of preparedness in the sense that you need to be in a position where you recognize a moment for what it is. But I would also say to people who perhaps are flatteringly, and John will experience exactly the same sort of thing, occasionally will remark on a particular goal you might have commentated on or a particular moment, that those are remarkable moments because they stand out. Something special has happened. You've been fortunate enough to be the guy with a microphone who's in a position to articulate an event on a sports field. But those are not the norm. We have normal days at work as well, and most days are normal days at work. Most days are unremarkable. Most days are about just, I would never call it a chore because it's a great privilege, our job, but most days are about the simple job of what you might call instant journalism that commentating is. Just once in a while, something flies at you, which is beyond normal, and those are the test of your instinct. And it's nice if once in a while you pass that test, because you don't every time. You do come away sometimes from a great moment and think in the car park, I could have done that better. And those are the disappointing days at the office. And the great days at the office are when you get in the car afterwards and think, do you know what? I think I got that right. And that, in a sense, is no different to any other job in the world.
Right, Peter. Let me ask this question again. It's going to John. It's one of the questions we picked up on Twitter. John, there's an interesting one. Just wants to know how much energy will be taken away from your commentary, especially football returning without fans. You know, going into the stadium and not seeing the fans, not having that kind of ambience that you usually, usually get. How much of energy will it take away from your commentary?
Well, it's not, I think, so much a question of how much energy it would take away from the commentary as to what extra we might have to give it, to give the whole experience for the viewer at home a bit more energy. And there are interesting debates going on at the moment over whether some sort of crowd noise should be piped into the stadium to create some sort of atmosphere, and indeed whether computer-generated images, CGI, should be used to try and create some sort of crowd. Now, my answers to that is no and no. Because I think it would be horribly false, but certainly in the United States, they're going down that line at the moment. It's certainly in terms of their planning and their thoughts at this stage across various sports. So there's all of that, but I do think that going into a game where there is no crowd, and both Peter and I have called games behind closed doors from time to time, and they're not particularly pleasurable experiences. You do feel that you're having to work a little bit harder than normal, and perhaps you have to contribute a bit more than you normally would, and you can't rely on that surge of noise and emotion from the crowd if a wonderful goal is scored. You know, one of the things that we have in our locker is that occasionally the ball will hit the back of the net. You've identified, hopefully correctly, the goal scorer, and then the crowd will take it from there, plus the 25 cameras around the pitch, and they will provide images and sounds that we would struggle to match with any words, and frankly, we'd just be getting in the way, but that's not the case behind closed doors. So I think there is going to be an extra layer that we're going to have to contribute to those broadcasts as and when they come around.
Well, Gary, I need to bring you in on the next question, and because I've been off for a while, just want to be sure if we have gotten into the Kwabnayewa, Oluwa, and Wunderbar. Maybe just the right time to go into what we have.
We have 20 minutes.
You tell me. Yeah. How did it all come about? Oluwa, Wunderbar.
John, Kwabnayewa, hold on. What we will do is, why don't we just play it back? So we have one of those clips of Kwabnayewa. Now, for the uninitiated, that's Peter and John and Robert. Kwabnayewa is Ghana's foremost commentator, all right? Now, he's developed a whole language on his own. So one of the things he would do is to tell us what language that is, and then he's going to tell us the story of, you know how in Germany when they score, they say Tor, right? Good. In Ghana, when Kwabnayewa there's a goal, he shouts, Oluwa. So we're going to get that, and then he can think of the answer to that one for us.
Are we going to see a decent cross this time around? And the ball hits the back of the net. Oluwa! Wunderbar! Asante Kotoko are in the lead.
President Yaboa.
It's 1-0 to 0 at the Kumasi Sports Stadium.
President Yaboa, the floor is yours.
Well, let me say that it was something I developed years ago, quite instinctive. You asked the question about commentary, and I must say that yes, on the spur of the moment, it can be quite instinctive. And then the fun, the adrenaline from the fun, the vivacity, the conviviality, and it drives you. And that is why, before I answer that question, it's dreadful for any commentator to commentate behind closed doors, because football is never the same. You know, if you remember South Africa, the 2010 World Cup, the uniqueness of the vuvuzela and the extent to which it just drove commentators around the grounds, you're just wondering, in the absence of all that, how commentary is going to be. But you keep tossing these things, and Oluwa is something that I developed, which only suggests that something is spectacular, a goal is spectacular, or something quite exciting. Actually, I've explained it quite a number of times. The original word is an English word, which is spelled H-O-L-O-A, something that's spectacular. You can always find it in the encyclopedia. And then over the years, I just got excited every time a goal scored. I just developed it. And then I had that experience in Germany as well, where I added a Wunderbar. And Wunderbar is something that is just wonderful. So I combined the two, and quite exciting. I love that. And I thank God that the listeners and the audience also love it.
George, anything else?
Yeah. I mean, it's just the one going to John. And John, how did you manage the transition from radio commentary to television commentary? How did you manage that?
Good question. And it deserves probably quite a long answer, because to me, there's no earthly reason why a good radio commentator necessarily becomes a good TV commentator, because the skills are not totally different, but largely different. But I suppose the best way to put this is to say that on radio, I think it's a bit like being an artist standing in front of a blank piece of canvas, and you have the privilege of being able to paint the pictures for the listeners in whatever style you wish, so they can be impressionistic on occasion, for example. Whereas on television, it's a bit like putting a straitjacket on, because those 25, 26, sometimes over 30 cameras around the ground are doing so much of the job for you. So there's no room for geographical location in a television commentary. There's no point in describing physical features of players or of stadiums, because people can see them with their own eyes. So it's a big adjustment. And I just remember in my early days switching from BBC radio to BBC television, the feedback I was getting was just, you're talking too much. And it was hammered into me at a very early stage. And I was coming away from games on TV thinking, well, I've said virtually nothing. But in fact, when you analysed it, particularly if there were games for recorded highlights which were being sliced together, you don't need to say that much. And I think it was a good discipline, actually, that my first television football for the first few years was largely recorded highlights rather than live games. And it got you into the grammar of doing a TV football commentary. I mean, very brief insight. When I was first taken on by TV, they sent me with one of the commentators I mentioned a few moments ago, John Motson, to a game at Selhurst Park. Crystal Palace were playing, and I sat on the gantry, and my job was just to sit next to him during the match and see what he did. And I was astonished, because the game kicked off, and for most of the 90 minutes, it seemed to me that his lip microphone was lying on the desk in front of him. And then every so often, when the ball got within 30 yards of one of the goals, he'd pick the microphone up and start commentating. I thought, well, how is this going to knit together into, say, a 10 or 15-minute edit on Match of the Day, the programme that we were going to work for that night on the BBC? And yet, when I listened to it, it sounded like he was talking all the time. So those were my formative experiences. I think everyone adjusts differently, but I consider myself fortunate that I had a lot of old heads around me just shouting at me all the time, stop talking, or you're talking too much. And eventually, I got the message, but it took a while.
Good.
Yeah, John, Gary, just the last one for Peter. Maybe just the last one for Peter, if you will.
Please do.
Peter, just the final one. What are you looking out for in your co-commentator?
Oh, that's quite straightforward. To tell me what I can't see for myself, to explain. The simple way we always articulate the difference between the commentator and the co-commentator is that the commentator essentially is asking the questions who and what, the historical, the factual questions, and the co-commentator answers the questions how and why. So if I have a top former professional footballer with me, or a former coach or manager, he ought to be able to articulate the footballing tapestry of a game through the eyes of a professional who has been there and done it. And the best co-commentators understand the distinction between their job and the job that John and I do. The best of those are the ones who come prepared with a genuine understanding of how the teams are going to line up, what the issues of the day are, how the players interact, how the dynamic of the teams are, and those who can deal with that sort of information and understand the distinction between that and the sort of instant recognition that goes with the commentator's role are the best ones.
Seems legit.
Right, then the final one to Rob. Yeah, Gary, I've been saying final one now because, well, I'm enjoying it myself. Great to hear these wonderful guys on. One to Rob now. Rob, let me just find out from you. You have had, or you've done massive interviews, great big interviews. Just before you get into that big interview, what goes through your mind before you start that?
I think I always try and look at the logical approach. You know, there's nothing that beats logic. We all human beings. You can all have accomplishments. We've been able to have great athletes, sprinters who've won 100-meter sprints. We've had World Cup winners and captains that we've had to interview. I just think the fact that my craziest moment in terms of doing radio, I've probably said it once or twice before, is approaching the late former president, Nelson Mandela, to be a guest on my show. So you can imagine this is a world-revered figure who is hardly too many current affairs shows can secure to be a guest on their shows. And here is good old me then, very early stages of my radio career, having that courage to approach him, to ask him to come onto my show. And I do say to him, though, that you're not going to be talking politics. I know you love sport. I know you're a former boxer. And at that stage, the former rugby union president, Louis Lades, had just taken him to court. There was a whole match-fixing issue with Hansi Cronje as well. So those were just some of the issues that I needed to know and find out from him. That is a transformational president, somebody who, when you talk about the Springboks, and you got to remember, if you're South African and you attach the Springboks to the rugby team, that was a symbol of apartheid then. But he was one of the first to say, no, 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 don't worry about removing it completely and going for the Protea as a symbol. Stick to it, hold on to it. So just to try and tap into his mind what those big decisions were all about. So I think from the early stage, you know, having to gather that gumption to go forward and say to a statesman like that, come and be a guest on my sports show, he gave me the best 29 minutes that I would ever thank him for, because there were so many life lessons. And I listened to that interview at least twice every single year, just to refresh myself of just the intellect that he had, you know, but it wouldn't have happened had I sat back. So at times you've got to be brave. At times you've got to go for those big hitters. At times you've got to go for the unconventional. You know, people like to repeat. If there's a Peter Drury or John Champion, people want to become a Peter Drury or John Champion. They listen to President Yeboah and they say they want to copy that. Emulating is not going to get you anywhere. Copying is not going to get you anywhere. You can take little aspects of what makes John Champion great, or Peter Drury or Mr. Yeboah great, and infuse that into your craft. And that is, for me, singularly the one thing that really says to me as a broadcaster, it stands out, it will be memorable, it will be something people will talk about. Because if you do run-of-the-mill, then run-of-the-mill is not exactly what you aspire to do. You put in the hard work, you get out the best as far as the benefits are concerned. And the continent is littered with all of those greats. We've got a former Ballon d'Or winner who's the president of a country, you know. So is he going to be my next target? I don't know, but that is that's a possibility, because when he was here in 2010, you know, we were running all over the place with the George Weah, and he loved the country. But even then, he even said to me at the time that, Robert, I want to become the president of Liberia. And I looked at him. Maybe there was an element of craziness in him, but that's what he said. But by saying that, he's walked the walk and he became what he wanted to become. So, you know, at times it takes those little small moments, you turn them big, and you'll never regret it.
George, satisfied?
Klum, shalele. Gary, over to you. Yeah, satisfied?
Yeah. So last 8 minutes of the show, there's something we want to do, and we want to take a bit of time to celebrate the frontline workers around the world. South Africa, in Ghana, and in the UK. So very briefly, because there's another part of the show that we want to end with a bang. So starting with Robert Marawa, briefly, if you can, say a word for the frontline workers who are doing such an amazing job worldwide. Your country, South Africa, has the highest rates of coronavirus in Africa. You are number 1 at the moment, confirmed cases. Algeria are number 2. Say something to the frontline workers, please.
It's a very difficult time, especially when, as I mentioned before, that we're dealing with this invisible enemy that we have. And when you have something like that, especially in a country that is so laden with HIV and AIDS infections, where people see visibly somebody who is sick. Now, you know, the thing about COVID-19 and coronavirus is that you don't see it up until it really attacks the person who has the virus as well. So to be able to be in a hospital, to be in a clinic, to be in any frontline environment takes a great deal of dedication. To put on that mask, to continuously put on the gloves, change the outfits that you're wearing, and make sure that you yourself are not infected or affected by it takes a great deal. And a lot of doctors, a lot of nurses and frontline workers, excuse me, have passed away. We've lost them in this battle. And it can make anybody scared, especially when you know that it's part of your job. But you know what happens every single day? They go to work. So I salute every frontline worker. I salute everybody that has taken their time and their job to go and heal and make better other people's lives. And we say, long may that continue. God bless you. Keep strong and keep your family strong as well.
Good. John Champion, brief, please, if you can, for frontline workers around the world.
I could be as brief as 2 words, Gary, which is just the biggest ever thank you for everything, for your courage, for your dedication, for keeping us as safe as you can, and for helping us when we do fall into trouble. I'm sorry that you haven't been better supported by the government, particularly here in the United Kingdom, in terms of the protective equipment that you require. And I fervently hope going forward that you finally receive the reward, recompense, and recognition that you so richly deserve. So back to those 2 words again. Thank you.
Kwabena Yeboah, briefly, please, frontline workers.
Let me say that these are extraordinary warriors. I call them real warriors against the background that, you know, the pandemic started in Wuhan in China, and we had information that some of the frontline workers were losing their lives. Again, in Italy, where it was hit hardest the second time after Wuhan, China, quite a number of medical workers just contracted the virus and lost their lives. So when the first case was reported in Ghana and started increasing, the fact that these workers had to put their lives on the line and just get into the wards and offer us that treatment, for me, has been extraordinary. And the fact that even those, unfortunately, who have contracted the disease are stigmatized and are not allowed in their neighborhood. And you have these workers getting right into the thick of affairs. I call them getting into the lion's den to get all of us safe. It's extraordinary. And that is why I doff my hat to all these wonderful workers. And let me say, intrigued that Yemamo Ayiko.
Thank you very much. Omodase. And Pt.2, you have the final say on this.
Yes, Gary, we live often in a society which is upside down in terms of how it appreciates its people. We so often lionize, inverted commas, heroes who are sportsmen, sportswomen, rock stars, actors, film stars. And if any good is to come out of this unfortunate episode in the history of humanity, it is perhaps that we are relearning who the real heroes are and starting to lionize the right people, because the people who are maintaining our society, retaining our health such as it is, just keeping us going, are the very people who for so long have been least well rewarded in our society, certainly in this country. And it is fantastic that we have finally got into the habit, as we should have done long ago, and without this prompting, of saying thank you regularly and really meaning it.
Wow, that is absolutely great. We are closing on the show now. Let me ask two questions that I have for John Champion and Peter Drury, and then we wrap it all up. Something on your adventures outside regular commentary. Now, Peter Drury, you are the voice of PES. That's the video game. John Champion,
I had a very hard act to follow in that.
John Champion used to do that in the video games. Our brothers, sisters, around the world. How do you manage that? Very briefly again, because we have 2 minutes and a lot of people have asked that. What does it do to you to go around to hear people talk of, yeah, we see it on the screen now. First, you, John.
Okay, PES, it's people that understand us as football commentators on the television. Quite a few of them don't know that we exist as commentators on PES, Peter currently and me previously, and vice versa. Lots of people think that we live in a computer. My favourite memory of PES was during the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, turning up at a hotel reception at 3 o'clock in the morning, having flown from Durban to Cape Town, a game the next day. All I wanted was my bed. I got to hotel reception, and the hotel bellhop behind the reception desk came out with a great big box and said, Mr. Champion, we've been expecting you. I'll give you your key in a moment. And before I could have my room key, he had 50 copies of PES that I had to sign the covers of, that they appeared on eBay the next day.
Very good.
Brilliant. Peter, we don't have a lot of time, so when I say briefly, 15 seconds, Peter. Your experience in PES.
On the subject of PES, well, John will tell you, as he already has to some extent, that actually commentating on a computer game is so far removed from the reality of commentating on an actual football match as to be utterly unrelated. Frankly, it is a long and laborious job of shouting until your tonsils ache. But there's a bit of fun to be had with it as well. And it obviously entertains a lot of people, which is great.
Wonderful. George Addo Jr., you want to wrap up for us in just 2 seconds, and then we call it an evening. George?
Let me say thank you to every one of you. It's been such a pleasure having you on this excellent show. And to everyone who's participated, love to everybody. I love this.
Thank you to Peter Drury from the UK, from just outside London, John Champion from further outside London, Kwabena Yeboah from here in Accra, about 3 kilometers from us here in Kokomlemle, and to Robert Marawa down south for all your time and for feeding our nation, Ghana, and the rest of the world with your incredible talent. You are our personal frontline workers, not in health, but in sport. Thank you for all you do for us. And Marawa, you have the honor of signing out for us.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks, George. Thank you very much indeed, guys, for inviting all of us. Thank you, Peter Drury. Thanks, John Champion. And of course, the host with the most, as he takes a sip of that empty glass of his. There's absolutely nothing but oxygen right there. Thank you, South Africa. Thank you, Africa. Thank you, world, for being a part of this wonderful conversation. And with these words, Sese Vala, Sachinja Glim.